There's a particular style I've noticed with series written by Clamp, or at least the shorter ones. Rather than take a common setting and playing with the various tropes within, they like to use these settings as the set pieces for whatever romance or drama they feel like. A good example of this is Cardcaptor Sakura, a story about the entangled personal lives of several children and teenagers that just so happen to have a magical girl as a main character. Nowhere is this style clearer than here, though, because we now have a science fiction where the focus is not on the science, but the ethics of the science. Chobits is set in a strange alternate universe where humanoid AI developed faster than personal computers, so everyone walks around with one or more androids or persocoms to perform the functions of modern laptops and PDAs. Everyone except for our main character Hideki, who is one of that particular subset of protagonists who can barely afford to feed himself. While moping about his lack of anything resembling technology, he comes across an old persocom that someone left in a trash pile. He decides to take it for himself since there was nobody around to bring up the several dozen reasons why that might be a bad idea. Luckily for him, she turns out to be in mostly working order, and he decides to name her Chi because on top of everything else, he's not very creative. I could say more about the story, but I think that would be a bad idea for a manga like this. Like most Clamp series, the overall plot is one of the biggest draws, and going too much into detail would be giving away part of the mystery. I actually have to take a slightly different approach to this series, since everything else I reviewed was mainly about people punching, shooting, and or blushing at each other, while Chobits is more about conversation and philosophy, with the robot serving as a framing device. The main theme of this series is, of course, the robots. How would you deal with them entering your society? What strange uses can we find for robots, and are these uses okay? Can a human truly come to love a robot, and can a robot truly love a human back? You know, the usual stuff. It's the presentation that makes these issues feel important, though. It wouldn't be all that difficult to just have two characters ask these questions to each other, and sometimes that's what it does, but instead we get to see for ourselves what effects these questions have. The story takes a great deal of time and effort to make you care about each individual character before revealing them to have a personal history with persocoms. What I found really impressive was that not only are the problems the characters face unique, but so are their opinions on how persocoms should be treated. There's never really a clear statement made about whether their integration into society is good or bad, and we can see for ourselves how their opinions ended up taking shape. It shows that there really is no clear answer to the many questions that plague robotics. Except for whether robots have free will. Everyone keeps saying they don't, and they even have some of the robots bring it up. With everything else clearly in the gray, it's very bizarre that this one point would be so heavily enforced. Of course, there's also the most popular question the series asks, which is whether it's okay to go out with robots. They go over this from many different perspectives, with the final answer being that these relationships can very easily end in pain and tragedy. In other words, they're not that different from human relationships. I was impressed by how unique each of the different subplots felt, but what I didn't like as much was how little the characters mattered afterwards. As nice as it is for two characters to get together, I'd have liked to see more of what things were like after their problems had been settled. Maybe that's a little too much to ask for from an 88-chapter manga, and maybe this isn't the only series that behaves like that, but when you're reading this quickly through the series, the plot just kind of moves on after tying up each thread. You need to follow through on your swings or they won't have as much effect. Also, something I found odd was the large amount of sexualization that gets applied to the persocoms, particularly Chi. It feels very out of place for a story about robot rights to portray them all in such a fetishistic style. Even if you're into this sort of thing, and I know a lot of people who are turned off by it, it almost drives home the message that these characters should be thought of as objects, and you have to wonder how okay with that you're supposed to be. Fanservice can be okay in lower quantities, but not when it starts to conflict with the greater themes. Because when you come right down to it, the messages and themes are really the point of the entire manga. I think overall this is a series meant to be viewed from an analytical standpoint. It makes us think about how we should behave around robotic life forms, and it presents a stunning character drama in the process. The story is easy to get into with a good number of running plot lines, and the science fiction elements can make it more appealing to some readers, although the actual science is questionable enough that I'm not sure if hard sci-fi fans will like it. The focus of the narrative is on the words rather than the pictures, so it can be a bit much for anyone who's not used to talkative manga like this. I also know for a fact that the level of fetishizing in this series can be too much for a lot of people. Also, a word of warning. If you're coming into this expecting the yaoi and yuri elements of other Clamp works, don't. This series was originally licensed by Tokyo Pop, but the license has since been transferred to Dark Horse, who have been releasing the manga in omnibus format. Chobits was released as an anime by Madhouse in 2002, and my understanding is that while the story of the two are mostly the same, a number of the themes have been changed for the anime. Clamp would also create a great many things. Yeah, I'm not even going to try to read off all these. Well, I finished my first Clamp series review, and something tells me it won't be the last. Who knows, maybe I'll even get to Tsubasa Chronicles one day, if I can get through the masses of things that I need to have to read before it. I guess that's something to look forward to.